Hi, and welcome everybody to this next presentation, which is going to be regarding Mathcad Prime. And with us, we have Magnus Eklund from our Swedish Alfasoft office. My name is Finn Sögnen. I'm the product manager for Mathcad. And with that, Magnus, maybe you can share your screen and start your presentation.
Okay, so I've started Mathcad Prime 7 here, the latest release of Mathcad Prime. I guess it was released in February this year, or was it in March, Finn? It was in February, right?
To be honest, I don't remember.
Okay, so I will make this as sort of a really quick sort of Mathcad training on how to get started with Mathcad, as it says on the screen. And my table of contents contains the things that you, I guess, should know how to use when working with Mathcad. And as we said earlier, please interrupt during the presentation with questions and comments. And it's okay to ask things about any version of Mathcad. And I guess it's okay to ask questions in Swedish, Danish, Norwegian, or English. This presentation, I could start with a blank worksheet like this. When you start Mathcad, you get something like this, and you can just start typing. But it's not that easy to explain everything when you have a blank worksheet. So I will use an example worksheet like this one that I've downloaded from the PTC website, just to have something to show. And to begin with, maybe I should say that Mathcad is a sort of a standard modern Windows software. It's a 64-bit software. It's the only version you can get on with Prime 7. It comes only in the 64-bit version. And we got this ribbon interface. You can see the features here, and if you for some reason double click on the ribbon, you will hide it like this one. It happens to me a lot when I'm too fast with clicking. We have a background grid that we can switch on or off. So now it's on, and now you can see no grid. And I guess it's important before printing if you want the grid or not when you're printing. We have it in two different sizes, either this fine grid that you can see here, or the standard grid you can see here. Going back to that sheet. And we can also see the worksheet in two different views. This one is called the page view. Here you can see the header and footer and margins and so on. If I want to do something in the header, I just double click here, or in the same thing with the footer. But we can also see the worksheet in draft view, and this is more like, as I think it was almost half of the attendees were familiar with older versions of Mathcad, and then this was the only option, the thing that's now called draft view. So if I switch grid off and hide the ribbon, maybe it looks a bit like old Mathcad.
Magnus, we said that we would try to do this interactive, and since you just mentioned Mathcad 15, I already have a question.
Sure.
And what is the difference between Mathcad 15 and Mathcad Prime?
Oh, that's a completely different presentation. And we have those from time to time. So I guess it's too much to explain here. So hopefully, if you're familiar with Mathcad 15 or older, then you will see the differences here. And please ask questions around that, but I will not have time to show all the differences here. But please follow up with the specific questions around features.
Yeah, and we also do have free webinars on moving from Mathcad 15 to Prime. So if you check out our upcoming free classes, you can join those for free, like I said.
Yep. And there I often sort of make lists of changes and see what you need to do when moving from 15 to Prime, and how you convert old worksheets to Mathcad Prime format, and take care of the things that not converted.
Yeah, and that's the next question I have for you. That is, can Mathcad 15 worksheets be opened in Prime?
No,
Julie.
but we can use this converter software here and convert all old worksheets to Mathcad Prime format, and that works for really old Mathcad worksheets, like from the 90s, even the first version of Mathcad in the 80s. So they need to be converted first. Okay.
Good.
I'm back to my presentation, and in this draft view there's no limits, just like in the old Mathcad. We can use the
I'm sorry, I'm going to stop you again, Magnus.
Feel free.
Yeah, so if you guys can see in the chat, if you're wondering about those free webinars, there's a link to them there, so you can sign up if you want. So yeah, sorry, Magnus, go on.
So this was the draft view. No limits to the right. You can use as much space as you want. And we have a nice zoom feature now that's much easier to use than the one in old Mathcad. So you can see here that there's no limits. But when you print it, you only get the thing to the left of the right margin there. I think I will sort of use something like 120% in this presentation. It's big enough, maybe. When starting working with Mathcad, I guess you find your own favorite settings for things in Mathcad, both for fonts and things for texts, and calculation settings, and of course you can create your own templates. So when I start Mathcad, I get a new blank worksheet, and if I click on this new worksheet, I get this with my favorite settings. So just like in the standard Windows software. And yeah, now I for some reason opened my last slide, and here you can see the content that I'm not presenting today if I don't get any questions around it. So you can see that there's much more in Mathcad than I will show today. But please, at the end, I hope it will be time for questions, and then I'll be glad to show other things as well. Let's see, I was here. Let's switch back to this page view. Everything in a Mathcad worksheet is called a region. So this is a text region, and if I select all regions, you can see they're all sort of their own parts here. And this is a math region, this is a picture region, but this is really an object region because it's I guess just a paint picture. So if I double click on this one, it will open up in Paint, and I can edit the picture just like with other OLE objects in other softwares. And in Mathcad, we can use units on values. That's a really nice feature of Mathcad. And further down here, more math, but this is kind of a typical Mathcad worksheet. It's only 7 pages, no advanced math, contains a few plots and so on explaining what this is about. So yeah, for me, I see this as kind of a typical Mathcad worksheet. I don't know how to move this go to webinar tool to be able to scroll, but okay. Anyway, let's walk through the features of Mathcad, or at least the basic features like this one. So I switch to my blank worksheets and start typing. So first thing to learn is how to enter text. We have two types of text. We have a text block that's sort of will fill up the complete width of the worksheet. So this is called a text block, but it's much easier to use the text boxes. So this is a text box, and those one you can reduce the width, you can move it around, you can copy and paste, of course, so you make your own layout to get a nice presentation. And we can also put images in our worksheet, and to do that we can just copy and paste from some other software, or we can click on this image button to grab an image file somewhere. So let's say I want that picture I used before, so now I have this one. And with picture you can't do that much in Mathcad. You can reduce the size like this if you want it smaller or larger, or copy and paste and move, of course. But more important is the thing that you want to enter math, some sort of calculations. So let's just enter something simple, 1 + 2, and then quickly you learn that the space bar is the key to success. So if you press this, if I press the space bar, I select things. So another space bar, select this one, and now I can use the division sign here to divide this by 3. Space bar, multiply by 4, and so on. +5, space bar, multiply by 6, -7, space bar, divide by 8 to get the result. So this is how easy it is to enter math in Mathcad. And in this case, it was a really simple calculation. And I think I made some pictures just to compare this with what it normally looks like in a spreadsheet or programming language. So let's see if I made the same sort of equation here. Spreadsheet, yeah, in a spreadsheet software. Of course, we get the same result, but it's much easier to read and understand what the math is in Mathcad, because it's how we write it with pen and paper. And here you need to figure out where's all these parentheses and so on. And this is from a spreadsheet, and I think I have a picture from sort of, if you just do it in Python or something, it's probably the same as in a spreadsheet. It always looks the same. So much easier to understand, and something you can present directly. And in a spreadsheet, you normally only see the answer in the cell, and if you want to see the calculation in the background, you need to click in the cell to see it, and it's not that easy to read. And if you, let's say, want something more, let's say I want an exponent on this one, maybe you don't know all the shortcut keys, and you use this operator palette here, saying, okay, I want to use an exponent. And in this case, you can see that Mathcad tells you what the shortcut is in this case, this caret thing. So I can put an exponent in here and calculate that. And talking about shortcut keys, I guess when you start using Mathcad, you don't start by memorizing shortcut keys, but if you want to know them, you can go to the Resources tab and click on this keyboard shortcut button. And if you got an English keyboard, you don't have to do anything. Everything will be explained in this worksheet. If you're in Scandinavia, Sweden, England, Sweden, Denmark, or Norway, then you can download this one instead and replace it with the original one, because the shortcut keys has moved around if you're on a Scandinavian keyboard. So this is on our website. You can download it and replace the original one in Prime. In Mathcad, we can also use, if I use another operator, let's take the square root of -3, and you will see that we can use complex numbers in Mathcad as well. So if I want to write complex number, I just use I or J in my calculation, so it works fine. The result you see here, this is with I can specify here on the math formatting tab, do I want I or J in my complex results? Do I want to show this in exponential format or not? This one, for instance, it's a large number. I can force Mathcad to present it with all the digits like this, or in a scientific mode where we always have it in exponential format, or why not in engineering when it's sort of always with an exponent. It's a multiple of 3. So we got a lot of options for presenting the results. And as you see now, everything is automatically calculated. I can switch that off if I want to, but in a presentation like this, and I guess in all normal cases, you want this auto calculation on. But of course, we can stop everything and specify that we want to wait for all the results to be done. Switching on like this. And calculations can also be switched off. I can say that I don't want to delete this region. I just want to disable it for some reason. In Mathcad, we normally put values in variables like this. I want the variable name A, and then I use the definition operator. The shortcut key is colon here, colon equals, and I can give this A a value. So now I can use A in my calculations. Maybe use B as well here and say that C should be square root of A squared plus B squared. So now I have a value in C that I can calculate, and you can see if I change anything here, it's automatically recalculated. And if I try to use, let's say 3 times A here, that works fine. But then I move it up. If it's too high up, you can see that now it's undefined. A has no value here, and the value of A can of course change. So here it's nothing, undefined. Here it's 3, and here it's 7. We also have a feature that maybe I don't like that much, but in a definition like this, we can make the evaluation in the same region. So just pressing equal gives me the result directly here. We also have another type of definition. You can see in this list, we have this with 3 bars. It's a global definition. If you use that one, then this variable must have the same value everywhere in the worksheet. So let's say that D should be 9. Now I can't change D, it's illegal. And on the other hand, I can use D wherever I want in this worksheet. I think I'll switch to draft view to be free of the margins and move around here like this. And we can have sort of nicer names on our variables, so more descriptive ones. So if I have a length, maybe I can call it length, something like that, or even with subscripts, so length, and use this subscript feature saying that this is the inner length. I have a value on that one. So it's really flexible when talking about variable names. We also have a feature that's new in Prime 7 called a combo box that makes it possible to create lists of inputs instead. So you get a drop-down menu. So let's say I want, let's say H should be something, but the value can be different ones. I go to this tab, put in a combo box saying that, okay, this is a list of different metals, I think was my plan. And maybe this is some sort of density. I'm not sure I remember. But this is aluminium, and this is some other metal, and a third metal, just to have something as an example here. This was 8.65. So, and here I can, if I have this list like that, you can see that now I can pick from this list. I can even say here that this is something where you choose metal like this. So an easier way to input the values and restrict the values to specific ones. I will come back to this one and talk more about it when talking about units. But first, something about functions. In Mathcad, we have a lot of built-in functions. If you go to the function tab, you can see a few categories here, but you can click on the all functions tab, seeing that we have a lot more here. So you can just open something here. Let's see that trigonometric functions. I want to use the sine. Of course, it's easy just to write sine. Let's click in the worksheet. Sine like this, and you get the value. But for any function, you can just go in here, double click on this one, and put your argument in. So in this case, let's put a pi divided by 2 and get 1 to see that it works as expected. We have a lot of several hundreds functions in Mathcad, but we can, of course, define our own functions. So let's say I want to define a simple function like this, just like in school. F of x should be a simple polynomial, maybe 3 times x plus or minus 7. Now I've got my own function called f. Now I can evaluate f of 3 and f of 23 and so on. F of b, as I defined that above. And if I want to use complex values, that works, of course, as well. So as an example, my plan is to create a function that calculates a volume. And I prepared myself with an image I grabbed from an old version of Mathcad. So a volume that calculates the frustum of a cone. So in this case, I can see the equation at the bottom. Let's define that one in Mathcad, maybe calling it vol and a subscript of this frustum. Say that should be 3 arguments, a, b, and h. And in this case, it should be just 1/3 multiplied by pi multiplied by h, and then I want something in parentheses like this, a times b plus b squared. So, and I can see that I missed something here. It should be a plus there, so I can just click there and replace it. Okay, now I need to delete that one, and so on. So it's easy to modify your equations afterwards. Just clicking, deleting, replacing, and so on. So now I can reuse my function. Fastest way is to copy and paste. Let's put a 2 here, 3 here, 4 here, and get the result. So easy to use functions. In Mathcad, we can handle more things than just scalar values. We can use vectors and matrices. And when talking about vectors and matrices, it's really important to know a setting. So you can see here in Mathcad, I've got the setting of origin to 0. That means that the first row and column in a matrix is number 0. So it's really good. So often I just evaluate that one in a worksheet, origin equals, so we can see 0. So now I know that if I create a vector, v defined as something, let's create a small one here with a few values. Now I can find the specific elements in this vector by using my vector index operator. So let's say I want the third element in this vector, then I put a 2 in here because I've got origin to 0. If I use origin, let's set it to 1, you can see now it picks up the 3 instead, because now it's 1, 2, 3 instead of 0, 1, 2. It's an important setting, and I guess it's not that normal to change it in a worksheet. And the other way around, I can set specific elements. So let's say a u4 should be 9. Now I've created the vector u, and Mathcad added zeros to the ones before because I said that the fourth element should be 9. And it's the same thing if you're using matrices. So I don't want to create large matrices because it takes time to enter values, but now I've got a matrix. Now I can use the vector operator, the index operator, to pick out specific elements. So there's my 8. Maybe I have several 8s in here. Let's see that. Okay, it was this one, the 9. And we can now try out the vector algebra to see that Mathcad knows how to handle the math. V times M should not be possible to calculate, but M times V in matrix algebra is this one. And of course, we have a lot of functions related to vectors and matrices. Like if I want to find out how many rows I've got in a matrix, I can use this function saying, okay, how many rows in M? It's 3. Another really nice feature in Mathcad is the one called range. So as a simple example, let's say y equals -2. Now y is -2, but I can add the range operator here. And let's start with a simple one without specifying any steps. So I put this range in here, say I want this to range from 2 to 3. So now I get a list of values from -2 to 3. And if I don't specify anything, it takes the step of 1. So let's see if I add a decimal value here, 2.4. You can see it's always the step of 1. And now if I use y in a calculation, that's 4 times y squared or something, I will always get 6 results. This is not a vector now, it's just a list of results. But I can also, let's copy and paste this so we can see the difference.
Magnus, can I stop you quick?
Sure.
So we have a question from Jan here from, I guess it was from some of the calculations you did earlier on. The density symbol should be rho instead of H. Can that be changed?
The what?
Density.
This one?
No, so do we have Greek symbols in Mathcad?
Yes, of course. Yeah, if you want to use some other letter here, let's look in the symbols. See,
Yeah, that one. That's rho.
that's what one. That's yeah. You can use any number, any value, any letter, and both Latin and Greek. You can find them here, or it's an really easy way to switch between them. You just press Control G. So in this case, if you want this row thing from the Greek alphabet, you just press R, Control G. R, Control G.
Thank you.
So I talked about ranges, and this is the simple way of using ranges. But if I use a comma as well down here, then I can specify the second value in my list. So let's do some thinking, minus 1.9, then I get a step of a half, right? I think so, yeah. So now you can see I get 11 values, 11 results whenever I use Y. So it's a really nice tool, and it can be used to create large structures. If you want a larger matrix, and let's try out this. Let's say I want to range R from 1 to 21, I think you often use in my examples, and C. So this, I want to use R for rows and C for columns, and I want to create a matrix with these R and C, and use R and C on the right hand side in my definition here. So let's take R minus 1, R minus 10, and let's minus C minus 10 squared or something. So now I've created, this is sort of a double loop, looping over all R's and all C's. So it's, I guess, 441 definitions. And my Z is here then 21 rows, 21 columns with different values calculated like this. But my plan here was to show this in a graph instead, just to be able to start talking about plots. So let's create a 3D plot. And you can see, you can present a matrix in a 3D plot and make it maybe fill with a color or something like that. But maybe this isn't the plots you use most. Maybe I should instead start talking about simple XY plots instead. You can see we have XY plots, we have polar plots, contour plots, and 3D plots. And all of these are with different input types and so on. But my plan is here to just use the simplest one of them, the XY plot. So I need some data. So I'll just enter, let's create an X vector with a few values. And I want these values to be points. Let's stop with 4. Some Y values as well. Vector 2, 3, 1, 8. So I just tell Mathcad that I want to use my X vector as my X values and my Y vector as my Y values. And hopefully you can see a correspondence between the values in the vectors and the points here. Let's say I want this one from 0 and this one Okay, step of 1, and the same on the x-axis. So the first one, 1, 2, the second one, 3, 3. So it looks like it's the same here. And here I can now specify if I want to use a symbol, sort of showing that these are the points, and the lines is just the default setting to do some linear interpolation, but I can either switch off or use other types of lines. And if I want to do some other example here, if I want to use a function, let's say I think I was already used f up there. Let's call this one f1 instead. Should be sine of x multiplied by x squared or something. Now I want to plot this one. Maybe I need to be careful because what variable I use here. I can see that x is probably defined above, or there's some other problems. It's undefined. That was my plan, to use an undefined variable. So let's see. I can't really see why this isn't working, but I just changed it so I know that it's an undefined variable. And now I can see, now I don't have to create the x points myself here. It's done by Mathcad, and I can change, okay, I want to see this from -20 and so on. And you can have multiple traces in the same plot just by adding one here. Let's compare this with 200 times cosine of t. Make this one red and dashed and so on. And in Mathcad, if you want to make more advanced XY plots, we have a separate module that was introduced in Prime 5. It's on the Math tab for some reason. It's called Chart Components. So you can use this one if you want to create more advanced XY plots. Let's see, maybe if there's time in the end, I can use that one. But of course, I want to talk about units as well. Whenever you use Mathcad and have a value, you can add the unit. So let's see the unit list here. Maybe this is some sort of calculation in here. I just wanted to pick something that maybe I understand something about. You can see it should be the complete SI system plus a lot of other units as well. So let's say I want to use kilowatts here, divide that by some sort of voltage and see that it's what I expect. Yeah, if you have a 2 kilowatt charger and 230 volt as we have in Sweden as well, this is the current. I know that this is not above my 10 ampere fuse, so it will work. And let's reuse some function from above. I had a volume up here. Let's copy and paste that one, or this one, copy, and put some units in to see that it works as well. So I can put centimeters, not on that side, centimeters and maybe inches and millimeters, and I get it. It's a volume in liters. If I want it in something else, I can just remove that one and say centimeters cubed or something. So it's really easy to work with units in Mathcad. And let's also reuse that combo box I had above, making it a bit more interesting with units. So this, if it was density, I just add it and see that, okay, I can put units in here. The problem here is that I'm not allowed to use to enter equations in here. So if I want it to be kilograms per liter, I think it was kilograms per liter, this one, I can't enter this one, but I can create my own units called kilogram per liter, as long as it's just a variable name. So let's say, then I use the string feature in Mathcad saying kilogram/liter. Let's delete the string. Let's set the label to unit. Just make a global definition and say that this should be kilogram per liter. So now I can use this one in here. That was not a good idea. Not copy paste kilogram per liter like that. So now I have this R Control G thing, and now with units, and here I can reuse that one, changing from one to the other. So in most calculations in Mathcad, you can use units, and it's a really nice feature. And it also tells you if you're doing something wrong. So it's not okay to add 23 centimeters to 6 kilograms. You will get an error saying that these ones are not compatible. And I use often in my presentation use an example. I guess I just Googled it up. Let's see my physics example. Put an image in here. It's called force. So let's try to recreate this one in Mathcad. It looks like a school example on force calculation. And in a Mathcad way, I would probably call something mass here with 500 kilograms. And let's see some sort of acceleration, 9.8 meter per square second. So it's example is on from our planet, and some sort of angle, and it looks like it's 45 degrees, 45. And for this, I could use deg as a unit like this, but we also have this small degree ring here we can use. So now I have what I got, and let's make the calculation. F, and I guess this is the two dashes over them just means parallel, so let's call it P. Mass times acceleration times sine of this angle. So hopefully FP, we get something. Maybe we want it in kilonewtons then. And it looks like the same result as in the picture. So this was what I planned to show, I think. Document, text, images, writing, math calculations, variables, vectors, ranges, plots, units. Yeah, and then saving at least 10 minutes for questions and comments and things like that, because as you see, there's a lot of other things in Mathcad that you might be interested in. So back to you, Finn.
Oh, yeah. Great. So we have a question here from Hein. How to create grid in plots?
How to create grids in plot? That's, I guess it's the question because let's just start Mathcad 15. Because in Mathcad 15, when we have a simple XY plot, we can sort of mark here that I want grid lines on X axis or Y axis. We don't have that option in the Mathcad Prime XY plots, but we definitely have it in the chart component. So if I recreate, let's do a really quick one with a chart component. saying, okay, I want x to be t. I think I reused t, and y expression to be, if it was f1 of t maybe. So now I got the plot here, and now if I double click on this one, I have a lot of settings that I would need an hour to present everything around here. But let's say on the x-axis, somewhere I can set grid lines, major tick marks, and so on, and y-axis grid lines, minor, and so on. Yeah, so here we have a lot of features for presenting graphs. So I guess if you're running Prime 7 and you really want grid lines in your plots, then I would recommend use the chart component. It can be fast. You don't have to go to all of the options.
Okay, good. So I think you just answered the next question here, and that is it possible to license and run Mathcad Prime 7 and Mathcad 15 side by side?
Yes, as long as it's bought this year, I guess, then a Mathcad license includes both Mathcad 15 and Mathcad Prime, and you can run them simultaneously. And you can even run multiple instances of Mathcad Prime and Mathcad Prime 6 as well. So now I think I've got 2 Prime 7 running and 1 Prime 6 running and 1 Mathcad 15.
Great. Yeah. Okay, so from Jacob here, can you insert a reference to another Mathcad file in Prime, like in Mathcad 15?
Yes, we have the exact same feature. In Mathcad 15, it's called insert reference. In Mathcad Prime, same feature, but it's called include instead. So include worksheet. So if I want to reuse definitions from another worksheet, I use this include one, and I can browse for, maybe I have some definitions in this distributed load worksheet that I can reuse. I probably used same variables with global definitions, so that was a bad example. But anyway, the same feature exists.
Okay, good. Next question. Can I continue using my Mathcad 15 license? Will it be supported?
Depends on what you mean with supported, but now we have customers on either perpetual licenses, the old type of license, then you can continue to use Mathcad 15 as long as you want, as long as it still works in Windows. We never know what happens with Windows. With Microsoft makes updates to Windows, it might stop Mathcad 15 from working because it's old and it contains old modules with security risks and so on. So, but that's out of our control. But if you have a modern license type, the subscription type, then it's another thing. Then if it's renewed next year, you will not have the possibility to run Mathcad 15 or Prime 6 and older, because they contain a module, the symbolic module in Mathcad 15 and Prime 6 and older can't be sold after New Year. But I guess, Finn, we have quite a lot of customers buying multi-year subscriptions now just to be able to run Mathcad 15 for up to 4 years, I think.
Yeah, so any customer that has a subscription license and want to use Mathcad for more than the next year, they can renew that license for a multi-year agreement. And that way the subscription will last more than a year, and hence they can use Mathcad 15 for more than the next year. So please get in touch with us if that's an issue and something that you want to consider.
But if you have a perpetual license, the old type, then there's no end date, no expiration date or anything.
That's correct. Apart from the home use licenses.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
They are renewed every year, so they will no longer contain Mathcad 15 license.
Yeah, correct. So do we have time for one more quick question? I think we do. Can I still run Mathcad if the workstation is not connected to a network?
Yeah, it depends on something else. With the Mathcad, it's either a locked license. Let's go to my license type. A locked license, then you use a license file here. Then the license is locked to your computer. Then you can be off the network and running it when you're on a bus or something. But we also have these floating licenses. Then you need to be connected to the network with the license server to grab a license. And if you want to go off the of the network, then you can use the borrowing feature if that one is enabled by the sort of administrator of the license server. So so the only case where you can't disconnect from the network is if you're using floating licenses and the borrowing feature isn't available. And that's just a decision from someone. Should we allow borrowing or not for our users?
Yeah, great. So last quick one. There are other questions, but we'll have to reply to those in the follow-up email. But what's the main difference between Mathcad 6 and Mathcad Prime 7?
Oh, it's this combo box. That's the biggest difference you will see. This is a completely new feature in Prime 7. Then of course there's a lot of other changes, but you don't see them. And I would recommend and I would recommend this anyway, sort of help.ptc.com, clicking on PTC Mathcad. And I think you can go here even if you don't have a PTC account or anything like that. You can get to the Prime 7 help because it's online nowadays, and you can see what's new in Prime 7, and you will see that a lot of new features is around symbolic enhancements, because that's the new module that was introduced in Prime 6 and it has been improved in Prime 7. But a few other new features as well in Prime 7. So I guess this is a good place to go. Anyway, you will find tutorials on how to learn Mathcad and specifics on functions and everything. So it's a recommended place to go. It's the same thing if you click on this help button, and if you haven't decided to install help local, you will go to the internet version of the help.
Thanks so much, Magnus, for that brilliant presentation.